I think there was a competition from her particularly, because I think she might have been cast as the movie star and thought it might have been her role.
Yeah.
We were all pretty equal, except for Bob.
They were America's favorite castaways. 7 souls stranded on an uncharted desert isle, turning what was supposed to be a 3-hour tour into a 3-season cultural phenomenon. For millions of us, Gilligan's Island was pure goofy escapism. It was a world of coconut cream pies, bamboo radios, and a sun that was always shining. The castaways felt like a real, if slightly bonkers, family. But what if the real storm wasn't hitting the island, but brewing on set? Behind the slapstick and the laughter, a much more complicated story was unfolding. It was a story of creative battles, quiet resentments, and career fears that threatened to sink the whole cheerful enterprise. While most of the cast eventually leaned into their iconic roles, one famous movie star saw the island not as a paradise, but as a professional prison. She would spend the rest of her life trying to escape its shadow, refusing to return to the show that made her a household name. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on that island paradise. We'll uncover the untold story of on-set tensions, the crushing weight of typecasting, and the personal reasons some actors, especially one particular movie star, said never again to Gilligan's Island. Before we get into why anyone would want to leave, you have to understand just how huge Gilligan's Island became. When it first aired in 1964, nobody, not the network, not the creator Sherwood Schwartz, and definitely not the cast, had any idea they were about to launch a pop culture juggernaut. The premise was simple, almost silly. 7 people from totally different walks of life shipwrecked together. It was classic sitcom fuel. The critics? They absolutely hated it. They called it inept, moronic, and preposterous. But audiences? They fell head over heels in love. They loved Gilligan's clumsy innocence, the skipper's hot-headed frustration, the Howells' clueless wealth, and, of course, the eternal debate. Ginger or Mary Ann? The show was a ratings beast. It was canceled abruptly after 3 seasons. Not because people stopped watching, but because of some network politics involving the Western series Gunsmoke. But the show's life was far from over. Thanks to syndication, Gilligan's Island became immortal. It played on a constant loop, introducing generation after generation to the castaways. That theme song is now burned into our collective brains, and the characters became archetypes. For the actors, this brought a level of fame few TV stars ever see. They weren't just actors anymore. They were Gilligan, the skipper, the professor, and Mary Ann. But for one actress with serious Hollywood ambitions, this wasn't a blessing. It was a curse. That fame, and the box it put her in, became the very thing she would spend her career fighting against. To really get Tina Louise's complicated history with Gilligan's Island, you have to know who she was before she ever stepped on the SS Minnow. She wasn't some unknown sitcom actress. She was a serious, trained performer with a promising career in dramatic film and on Broadway. She had studied at the prestigious Actors Studio and, in 1958, won a Golden Globe for New Star of the Year for her role in the film God's Little Acre. She was a real-deal movie actor on a path to serious stardom, so why on earth did she sign up for a goofy sitcom? It's a classic Hollywood tale of smoke and mirrors. According to both Louise and show creator Sherwood Schwartz, the role of Ginger Grant was sold to her as something very different. Louise was led to believe the show would be centered on her character, the glamorous movie star. Schwartz later admitted his casting agents might have oversold her on this to get her to sign. He remembered her being confused by the first scripts, asking why Ginger wasn't the focus. He had to gently explain that a show called Gilligan's Island probably wasn't going to be all about Ginger Grant. That initial bait and switch soured the whole experience. Louise found herself on a set dedicated to broad, slapstick comedy she felt was beneath her talents. Instead of a complex character, Ginger was often just a one-dimensional glamour queen. The mood on set grew tense. While the other 6 cast members were famously close, Louise often kept to herself. A 1965 TV Guide article described a chilly atmosphere, especially between Louise and the show's star, Bob Denver. The article noted they would ignore each other, and Denver flat out refused to be photographed with her. Rumors flew, including one that Denver had spread gossip about her, making things even worse. Dawn Wells, who played Mary Ann, later said that while they weren't enemies, Tina just wasn't really part of the group. She saw herself as a movie star among TV actors, creating a divide that never really closed. This was made worse by a now famous dispute over the opening credits. Louise's contract stated her name had to be listed last, a premium spot for a major star. To make this work, for the first season, the theme song ended with the line, "and the rest," referring to Russell Johnson's Professor and Dawn Wells's Mary Ann. Bob Denver thought this was unfair and used his own contractual power, which let him place his credit anywhere, to force a change. He told producers that if they didn't add Johnson and Wells to the theme song by name, he'd have his own credit moved to the very end, after Louise's. The network caved, and the Professor and Mary Ann were officially added to the iconic song. While a huge win for Johnson and Wells, it probably didn't help mend fences with Louise. But the biggest reason Tina Louise distanced herself was the paralyzing fear of typecasting. In the 60s, TV was seen as a step down from film, and being stuck as one silly character could be a career killer for a dramatic actor. Louise felt this deeply, later saying the show had ruined her movie career. Casting directors couldn't see past Ginger. This is why she adamantly refused to appear in any of the reunion movies. When the cast reassembled for Rescue from Gilligan's Island in 1978, Louise said no. The role was recast with actress Judith Baldwin. She was also absent from The Castaways on Gilligan's Island in 1979 and The Harlem Globetrotters on Gilligan's Island in 1981. While money was part of it, she reportedly asked for a huge sum she knew producers wouldn't pay. The real reason was her desire to protect what was left of her serious career. She didn't leave Gilligan's Island because of ego or on-set squabbles. She left to save her identity as an artist. For Tina Louise, the real shipwreck was the collision between her own ambitions and the inescapable legacy of a 3-hour tour. While Tina Louise was trying to escape the island, the rest of the cast had a totally different take on their fame. Their stories show just how differently actors can handle being part of a cultural phenomenon. As the guy whose name was in the title, Bob Denver was forever linked to Gilligan. He'd already been a TV star as beatnik Maynard G. Krebs on The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis, so he knew the danger of typecasting. And he did get typecast, starring in similar goofy comedies later on. But he ultimately accepted his connection to Gilligan, returning for every reunion movie and cartoon. Behind the scenes, he was a quiet champion for his co-stars. His fight to get the Professor and Mary Ann into the theme song is the most famous example of his loyalty to the ensemble. Nobody, and I mean nobody, embraced their island persona more than Alan Hale Jr. The son of a famous actor, Hale saw the role of Skipper Jonas Grumby as the highlight of his career. He loved being the skipper. After the show, he'd often show up at events and even visit kids in hospitals wearing his signature captain's hat. For him, there was no line between Alan Hale Jr. and the skipper. He enthusiastically returned for every single reunion until his death, viewing his association with the show as a privilege, not a burden. If Alan Hale Jr. was the heart of the show's legacy, Dawn Wells was its soul. The former Miss Nevada, who played the wholesome Mary Ann Summers, Wells embraced her iconic status with open arms. She proudly championed the girl next door in the Ginger or Mary Ann debate. Wells became the cast's unofficial historian, appearing at countless conventions and interviews. She even published Mary Ann's Gilligan's Island cookbook and became a marketing ambassador for the MeTV network, which aired reruns. She saw being Mary Ann as a gift that connected her with generations of fans. Russell Johnson's story is a bit more complicated. A decorated World War II hero and a busy character actor, Johnson was initially frustrated by the show's silliness and especially the "and the rest" credit line. After the show ended, he found himself typecast and struggled to get other kinds of roles. But over time, Johnson's view softened. He came to appreciate the show's harmless fun and the love people had for the professor. In a 2004 interview, he said, "It used to make me upset to be typecast. But as the years have gone by, I've given in. I am the professor, and that's the way it is. It's brought a lot of joy to people, and that's not a bad legacy." He happily returned for the reunion movies, making peace with his place in TV history. For Jim Backus and Natalie Schafer, who played the wealthy Howells, Gilligan's Island was just another job at first. Backus was already a huge star, famous as the voice of Mr. Magoo and for his role in Rebel Without a Cause. Schafer, a veteran actress, reportedly only took the role for a free trip to Hawaii to film the pilot, convinced the show would flop. They played the roles brilliantly, and ironically, both became quite wealthy through savvy investments. They committed to the reunion movies, with their time on the island ending only due to their declining health. Over a decade after the show was canceled, the call finally came to rescue the castaways. Nostalgia was huge in the late 70s, but getting the gang back together wasn't as simple as you'd think. The reunions were marked by absences, health scares, and empty huts. The first was the 1978 TV movie, Rescue from Gilligan's Island. It finally gave fans what they wanted. The castaways were saved. Everyone signed on, except one. Tina Louise refused to participate, cementing her decision to leave Ginger behind. The role was recast with actress Judith Baldwin, but for fans, it just wasn't the same. Still, the movie was a huge ratings hit, so a sequel was inevitable. In 1979, the castaways on Gilligan's Island saw the group open a resort on their old island, a pretty clever nod to the fact that they could never really leave it behind. Once again, the original cast returned, and once again, Tina Louise was absent, with Judith Baldwin filling in. The third and final reunion, 1981's The Harlem Globetrotters on Gilligan's Island, is probably the most bizarre of them all. The plot involved the famous basketball team crash landing and playing against robots. This time, there was another more heartbreaking absence. Jim Backus, who played Thurston Howell III, was suffering from Parkinson's disease, and his health was too poor for him to take a full role. Sherwood Schwartz refused to recast Mr. Howell, so he wrote the character out, explaining he was on the mainland, and introduced his son, Thurston Howell IV. But near the end of filming, Backus insisted he was well enough for a cameo. In a deeply emotional scene, a frail Backus appeared at the very end of the film. Dawn Wells recalled that after he delivered his line, he anxiously asked her, "Was I funny?" She assured him he was, then broke down in tears after he left the set. It was a courageous final performance. The story of the actors who left Gilligan's Island is really about the double-edged sword of TV immortality. Being on a show so beloved it airs for over half a century is incredible. It provides financial security and a permanent place in the hearts of millions. But that fame comes with a price. For Tina Louise, the shadow of Ginger Grant was a total eclipse. Her struggle wasn't with the show's success, but what that success did to her identity as an artist. She saw typecasting as a creative prison, and refusing to do the reunions was her way of fighting for the right to be seen as more than Ginger. In stark contrast, Dawn Wells found freedom in the spotlight. By embracing her identity as Mary Ann, she built a whole career as a TV ambassador, producer, and author. She understood that the public's love for Mary Ann was a source of connection and opportunity. She didn't feel trapped by the island. She owned it. The other cast members landed somewhere in between. Bob Denver and Russell Johnson felt the sting of typecasting, but eventually made peace with their iconic roles. Alan Hale Jr. simply became the skipper, and Jim Backus and Natalie Schaefer, the established veterans, treated it as a wonderful, profitable chapter in their long careers. The tale of Gilligan's Island is more than just fun facts. It's a powerful look at what happens when a fictional world becomes more lasting than the careers of the people who built it. It reminds us that behind every character, there's a real person navigating ambition, satisfaction, and regret. Some, like Tina Louise, chose to build a new raft and sail away. Others chose to stay, finding comfort on the shores of that familiar island. The story of the Gilligan's Island cast is full of surprising turns. Which actor's story surprised you the most? Was it Tina Louise's battle against her own fame? Or Jim Backus's courageous final scene? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you love diving into the untold stories of classic TV, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss the boat. In the end, the sunny shores of Gilligan's Island held a far more complex reality than we ever saw on screen. The camaraderie was real, but so were the creative clashes. The love from fans was a powerful thing, but for some, it felt more like a gilded cage. The actors who distanced themselves, especially Tina Louise, weren't rejecting the fans. They were wrestling with a question every artist faces. What's the true cost of success? The legacy of Gilligan's Island isn't just in its silly jokes or its unforgettable theme song. It's in the very human stories of its 7 stars, stories of acceptance and rebellion, of pride and of regret. It's a reminder that even in paradise, the currents of real life are always moving just beneath the surface.